As a man, what are some of the most ridiculous double standards you've had to deal with? Story 1. This girl in my office had a crush on me and she told everyone. She started doing stuff like calling me her work husband, which I said was not okay. Things got slowly worse. She started pranking me. She took a picture of me, then cut out my face and started putting it all over the office. I got coworkers who started talking to me about how fun and quirky she is, etc. One time she wrapped my office cube in Christmas paper. I asked her to stop and I even spoke with her manager. Nothing. I got a card from my girlfriend on Valentine's Day. She lit it on fire and threw it in the sink in the break area. Apparently this is still cute and just her showing me she cares. I ended up quitting. Man, that sucks. I hope this dude found a way better job. Story 2. I used to be one of the only male teachers in an all-girls high school. The overwhelming majority of parents are reasonable people and the kids are great for the most part. My colleagues and the administrators were the primary sources of frustration. The majority of the female faculty and school administrators have this thinking that every man is a closet creep. It's legitimately disgusting. I left the same year they fired one of the other male teachers for patting a student in the back while she was crying. He was trying to comfort her. I did not think it was creepily patting her. There were female faculty members who would hug students to comfort them and they were never fired or received disciplinary action. I couldn't, in good conscience, work there anymore or put myself at risk at the whim of some unhinged administrators. The other male teacher who got fired sued the school and the administrators. He settled out of court, as far as I know, and was able to find another teaching job, fortunately. Story 3. About 12 years ago, I hired a woman shortly before Halloween. She had just moved to town, had a couple of kids, and didn't know anyone. I invited her and her kids to go trick-or-treating with my wife, me, and our kids. Our kids were about the same age. She and her kids came over to our house, and her daughter took an immediate liking to me. She was 8 years old, but mentally challenged, and she was more in line with a 4-year-old. While I was sitting on the couch, she jumped onto the couch and sat down on my lap, cuddling up to me like I was a teddy bear. It was very odd for me, to say the least, but okay, and I held her as she laid her head down on my chest. My brother-in-law immediately started making a joke with this kid in my lap. Normally, it would have been funny to me, but it was probably the first time he made a bad joke and it made me uncomfortable. Her mom explained that's how her daughter expressed that she was completely comfortable with someone and thought it was the sweetest thing she'd ever seen. Thinking back, it was a cool moment that a small child, after only knowing me for barely an hour, felt that comfortable with me. She was and is a sweetheart. Story 4. I have a very good guy friend. He's a big dude, 6'6", about 280 pounds. He has a little girl, he's also a single dad, so no mom to help, and freaking adores her, but cannot stand the verbal diarrhea people have when he goes to stores to get her little girl things, i.e. a special tea set and fun fluffy toys. It got so bad that he called me to go into a Hello Kitty store with him and act like I was buying the gigantic fluffy Hello Kitty pillow for myself. Of course I did it, but I cannot imagine how he feels as a guy who just wants to get things for his little girl but gets looked at like a creep because of it. Man, it must stink that men get that kind of treatment just for trying to be parents. If this father had it tough, check out what the teacher in Story 6 usually goes through. Story 5. I went through a 6-month heated political battle 10 years ago at work around gender equality and responsibilities of duty, which still leaves me shaking my head. Basically, I used to run many sales teams across North America. These salespeople lived on the road, either by taking 2 to 4 flights a week or driving 80,000 miles a year if they had a rural territory driving around to different parts. They took a minimum of a $15,000 base salary and earned 5% of everything they sold as commission. The base salary was set by years worked as a professional seller plus seniority at the firm. Cost of living increase plus $5,000 bump in base every year you hit the planner, a $2,500 bump for not being terrible. Top salespeople made $250,000 a year. Learners and entry people made $35,000 to $50,000, and mid-packers made about $80,000 to $120,000. They also got to keep all their credit card points, which could add up to 2 family vacations a year depending on how they spent on travel and entertainment. One day I got an official letter of complaint from a female saleswoman who complained that her male colleague got extra leads from a trade show and it wasn't fair. The most egregious part is that she was on the lower end of the mid-pack even though she had the job for 5 years and she was complaining about a kid who just started his job and barely made rent money. All of a sudden, about half my sales teams, who were women, started the same complaint in support of the first person. Even though careful analysis showed our lead distribution process was very fair, I almost had to stop working because of this complaint. After a 6-month-long investigation and interviewing every one of my 500 sellers, it turns out that the majority of the time, female sellers, all but 2, and those 2 were consistently in the top 5 sellers in the country, consistently left trade show floors earlier to catch flights they booked to get home earlier. They never did tear down and pack up equipment and ship equipment out, a process that could take 2 to 5 hours longer. There was nothing stopping anyone from wanting to help tear it down. My sellers set their own schedules and booked their own flights. All of the men said they always seemed to be the de facto teardown people. They were happy to do it because during this time, other salespeople from the trade show would shoot the crap. Relationships would bloom and new areas of distribution or direct customers would form because it would be the same set of people staying behind an extra half day to pack up. Rinse, repeat over a year or two with a trade show every 2 weeks, and those who stayed behind to do cleanup work did show higher performance on commission. In a job that is majority commission-based and not exactly hard to measure performance, and the activities that supported high performance, have more meetings, meet more new people, track and follow up thoroughly, we still had people thinking it was a gender discrimination issue. Story 6. I was a male who worked in childcare for 5 years. I understood the reasoning behind it, but I had to be absolutely careful to be impeccable in my dealings with kids and parents. Just because anything is slightly off about my vibe, etc., could spell the end of my career. On more than one occasion, a new parent who hadn't dealt with me before refused to leave their kid at the school with me if I was the only staff member on the premises, opting to wait in the car until a female staff member arrived. This wasn't the case with parents who were familiar with me, but new parents often just didn't trust me at all. When I resigned from the school, the other staff said how irreplaceable I was, how much the kids and staff trusted and appreciated me, etc. I think I did a good job, but even so, just being a male meant that I was trusted less from the get-go. I didn't hold it against anyone, but it was a double standard I ran into often. Story 7. My sister-in-law and her husband are headed down the court battle road over the custody of my young niece. My sister-in-law is a narcissistic train wreck who chose to only keep their daughter on weekends because her teaching job was too stressful. Then every weekend she wants to party, so her parents end up with my niece. The dad is a respected canine handler for a specific unit in Baltimore, is engaged to a very nice woman, owns his own home, and rearranged his life to have their daughter during the week. They have no formal custody agreement. My father-in-law thinks because he's an a-hole is an acceptable reason why he shouldn't have custody. I'd be an a-hole if I had to deal with her too. He's very nice to me, my wife, and our kids. In reality, the courts will probably side with her even though my wife and all of my sister-in-law's close friends find her to be unfit. And the person who will suffer the most is my niece. Man, it's definitely weird how men are seen as inferior caregivers. I wish these gender roles and stereotypes would eventually be addressed properly. Story 8. If you're a stay-at-home father, or worse, just a stay-at-home spouse as a male, there's a sizable portion of people who are going to think less of you as a man, assume you're a freeloader, etc. While the opposite is true to an extent as well, stay-at-home mothers or housewives are far more socially accepted. People will sing the praises of stay-at-home moms, call it the hardest job in the world, ask if their husband is helping out enough at home, etc. A man will be asked if he's on babysitting duty, mocked for playing Mr. Mom, ridiculed for staying home while his wife works or having his wife wear the pants, criticized for not providing for his family, etc. I was out of work for a period due to my gym temporarily closing, meaning my girlfriend was supporting us. I had worked for the entirety of our 15-year relationship until that point, but that didn't stop people from acting as if I were a deadbeat. Story 9. My mom took custody of both my sister and me. My sister was smart enough to go with my dad after a while. I was still too young to realize the situation I was in. My mom inherited a bunch of money from my uncle, and we were loaded, so as a kid who got most of what I wanted, I didn't think anything of this situation. Long story short, my mom blew all her money on illegal substances while my dad was working 3 jobs to pay almost $1,000 a month in child support while my sister and I were in my mom's custody. She had me on a bunch of prescriptions because she didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't remember much of my childhood, to be honest. I ended up asking my dad if I could live with him, and he came and picked me up, essentially across the country the next day. I went from living in a $500,000 house in Florida with my mom to a double wide trailer in New York with my dad. He was actually a parent to me. He had to work more odd jobs because we found out that my mom had blown all the money our rich uncle had set up for us, including our college funds. Basically, I just want people to know that I know that dads can be real heroes. I will never question why a man has custody of his kids. My dad will always be my number one. Story 10. I was at my wife's company Christmas party and the girlfriend of her coworker straight up grabbed me the wrong way. Then she asked my wife if it was okay. She literally didn't even say hi to me. I felt like an object. I was too surprised to do or say anything for a solid 60 seconds. My wife didn't really register what was going on, so she didn't say much of anything. The boyfriend didn't see, I guess. Anyway, I flipped the genders and someone would have said or done something. Man, I'd be uncomfortable if that happened to me. I know some of these stories must be upsetting to some of you, but hey, this is not the only video I have, so hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of videos that might make you feel good instead. Story 11. When men open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as weaker, less masculine, immature, and too emotional. When women open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as more empowered, more feminine, more mature, and more in touch with their emotions. When men fail, they're often viewed as pathetic and not working hard enough. When women fail, they're often viewed as hard workers staying strong in an unfair world. When men make more money than women, there's controversy about the wage gap. When women make more money than men, those men are viewed as inadequate and lacking in ambition. Story 12. I opened up to my ex about my feelings and other topics that are being brought up here. Being pastored or violated, being uncomfortable around children lest I be labeled a creep, etc. She told me that it was insensitive of me to bring up these topics with her because she was violated as a kid and it was triggering to her. If these things were bothering me, I should talk to a therapist about them. She told me at the beginning of the relationship what happened to her as a child but wouldn't talk much about it, and she wouldn't go to therapy herself. She said she had done therapy as a teenager and didn't need it anymore. I'd been going to therapy for 4 years at the time and had done a lot of good work. I just wanted to be open with her about how I feel about things in our society, but she told me that I needed to go to therapy 4 times as much as she thought I was actually going. I'd been going once every 2 months before meeting her and was going almost every 2 weeks once we started dating. I never told her about this because my therapy is my business. She just assumed I was going every couple of months. But God forbid I suggest she go to therapy. No, she went a few times when she was young. She was fixed for good. But I was the problem. Oh, did I mention she was a counseling psychologist? Good times. Story 13. Half of my attractiveness has always been based on how much I make. My mother married into wealth in her third marriage, private jets, yachts, and the works. I'm mostly humble about it and keep it low. I mean, it's not my money, they don't support me, and we have a terrible relationship. I started hanging around a friend who loved to boast about money and the money that other people have. He would tell women I come from money and they should lock me down. The amount of interest they had in me after that would skyrocket. It would be normal women 1 second, then turn shallow, fake, and super desperate. Not going to lie, the desire felt great, but I quickly learned it's not real. I stopped being friends with them and haven't looked back. Man, I think it's lame how some think that money makes people more attractive. I don't think money should define who we are. Story 14. I don't really like that women want to be treated as equals but are perfectly fine with letting their men pay for all their dates. Some women I've dated are better than others, but ideally, they're not making it awkward. They pull out their cards and take the bill, or they tell you in advance, I'm taking you on a date and paying for everything. I fully believe it should be at least proportionate to your income. Like, the guy should pay 75% of the time of his income represents 75% of their total income, but that lady should be covering roughly 25%. Also, this only applies in a relationship. I'm okay with paying for the first few dates during a dating period. I want a gal who supports me and wants me to be able to save money, as I would want that for her too. I feel disrespected when they're never paying. Story 15. The dress code. I say this as a cis dude, alright? I'm at my job and I have long hair. I dyed it pink and wore it in pigtails. The boss says I can't do that. Fine, man bun. I wear skin-tight jeggings. Boss breathing down my neck again. I can't do that. I wore pink boots. Nope, I can't do that either. They thought I was cross-dressing. Now, if I were trans and I was trying to present myself as a woman, we'd be having a totally different conversation. Yeah, it's still messed up, similar but different. But I wasn't, and they said I couldn't dress really girly. What does that mean? It's not girly when all the women do it. That's a legit double standard. Story 16. I'm a physician, surgeon. I get hit on a lot by females, usually older women. If not directly tell me I'm hot or easy on the eyes or something, they tell me a female assistant or female residents or students whom I am training, and it makes them very uncomfortable. Or they'll tell the nurses in the pre-op or recovery unit, the anesthesiologist, etc. Imagine men saying things like that too or about a female doctor. Pretty sure most know that's an absolutely inappropriate thing by now, I hope. I know females deal with that constantly in general, but it makes for an uncomfortable situation when you're establishing a relationship with patients. I've asked my female colleagues if they get directly hit on by patients, and thankfully for them, they've all said no, so at least there's that. Story 17. A fat woman is told she's beautiful at any weight and to be proud of her curves, that being fat is beautiful, etc. There are even plus-sized models. I don't hear anyone saying, fat men are fantastic, huge is handsome, or moobs rock. I'm pretty sure that fat guys out there aren't getting their doors broken down by frisky women because fat is beautiful. Men shouldn't objectify women, but women use toys, which seems like the ultimate objectification of men. If a man roughs up a woman, he's a dirtbag, which I agree with. If a woman does that to a man, people will say, you go girl, girl power, and nearby men often help the woman. Being a full-time mom is, according to Oprah, the toughest job there is. Being a full-time working dad, it's your job. Man up. If a girl gets pregnant, it's the man's fault. Unless he used sedatives on her, the woman has to take some responsibility. Everyone knows what causes babies. There was a time when the number of women being injured at work went up to 7%. There was a national investigation. The reason was that there was high unemployment at the time, so there were fewer men at work to be injured. 93% of all workplace mortality and injuries involve men, and no one bats an eye. I have heard about that situation with men at work. Man, it's tough having a Y chromosome. Story 18. I'm a teacher, and I volunteer 2 weeks every summer at a camping site to entertain the kids. I just like kids. They're creative, open-minded, unpredictable, and don't worry as much as adults do. Most little girls like me because I'm caring and have long hair, jewelry, and earrings, so they want me to pay a little more attention to them than other kids, which I sometimes do. I sit on my lap or carry them on my shoulders. Multiple parents have filed complaints against me for apparently being a creep because of this. I am just trying to give these kids a good time. Let it be, people. In addition, being grabbed at festivals by random girls and being called lucky, like what the hell? Why is it okay to grab a guy but not a girl? In what scenario should my gender decide whether I'm lucky or not? Story 19. I'm a rather big guy. I lift every day, but honestly, I don't realize I'm intimidating. I'm kind of a blundering idiot. I left my lights running in my car and went inside a grocery store. I came out and my battery was dead. I had jumper cables but needed another running car. Right then, a young woman with 2 children walked up to the car next to me. I introduced myself, started to explain my plight, and asked for help. She jumped in her car quickly, drove off, and didn't say a word. Then I realized I probably scared the crap out of her. A random big dude walked up to her while she was alone with her kids. I called a friend and he was 30 minutes away, but on his way to help me. I'm waiting next to the car and 2 police cruisers roll up on me. They approached me, asked me to put my hands in the car, and did a vehicle search. The whole 9 yards. The lady had called the cops. My buddy showed up mid-search and they pestered him too. They were convinced we were running some abduction ring or something. They finally let us jump my car and go. Even then, one of the cruisers followed me to my house. It was annoying. Lesson learned though, never ask for help from a stranger. Story 20. As a single dad with custody of my son, the number of times I've been asked, "Why do you have him?" on a first date or when I start talking to a woman in a dating app is ridiculous. I can only imagine what would happen if a single mother was asked that same question. Why is it completely acceptable for a woman to leave a man and take his kids away with no questions asked? But when a man has custody, I'm treated like I must have stolen my own child. Story 21. Behavior when drunk. Plenty of times you see women being overly aggressive or even just incredibly hammered in a bar or club where you know a man would be ejected, but women are allowed to stay because they're seen as less of a threat. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy What Myth About Men is 100% Fake. Story 4 is such an eye-opener. See you on that video.